when misrule takes its place at the eight corners of the world, when the brass tower walks and time is reshaped, when the thrice-blessed fail and the red tower trembles, when the dragonborn ruler loses his throne and the white tower falls, when the snow tower lies sundered, kingless, bleeding, the World Eater wakes and the wheel turns upon the last dragonborn. When the Ayleid elves came to the heartland of Cyrod, they established their magnificent empire on top of the local populations that predated them. Their cities served as brilliant exhibitions of the closeness the elves felt to the divine. They were one step beneath the Aedra in all their beatific glory, and the humans, in their inferior non-permanent settlements, were no more significant than the insects beneath their silver gold boots. They constructed the White Gold Tower in tribute to the Adamantine Tower, and it was a testament to their supremacy. For centuries they ruled Cyrod, enslaving and subjugating the native needs, even torturing them for entertainment. In his memoirs, Morahouse the Man-Bull mentioned that men were given over to the lifting of stones, and the draining of the fields, and the upkeep of temple and road, or to become art tortures for strange pleasures, as in the wailing wheels of Vindazel, and the gut gardens of Cercin, and flesh sculpture, which was everywhere among the slaves of the Ayleids in those days. Or worse, the realms of the Fire King Hardhul, where the begetting of drugs drawn from the admixture of Daedrons into living hosts let one inhale new visions of torment, and children were set aflame for nighttime tiger sport. The only thing more vast than their dominion, the only thing that stood as tall as their tower of white gold, was their hubris. So immense it was that none could have anticipated the rise of Saint Alicia, whose prayers were answered. Her rebellion, bolstered by Pelennor Whitestrake and Morahouse the Man-Bull, tore down the foundations of the Ayleid Empire. When the most egregious of the Ayleid kings were put to the sword, and the cities that engaged in Daedra worship were brought under the possession of Alicia, Akatosh, or was it Shor, came to the slave queen and offered her an accord. He gathered the tangled skeins of oblivion and knit them fast with the bloody sinews of his heart, and gave them to Alicia, saying, "This shall be my token to you, that so long as your blood and oath hold true, yet so shall my blood and oath be true to you. This token shall be the amulet of kings, and the covenant shall be made between us. For I am the king of spirits, and you are the queen of mortals. As you shall stand witness for all mortal flesh, so shall I stand witness for all immortal spirits." And Akatosh drew from his breast a burning handful of his heart's blood, and he gave it into Alicia's hand, saying, "This shall also be a token to you of our joined blood and pledged faith. So long as you and your descendants shall wear the amulet of kings, then shall this dragon fire burn, an eternal flame, as a sign to all men and gods of our faithfulness. So long as the dragon fires shall burn, to you and to all generations, I swear that my heart's blood shall hold fast the gates of oblivion. So long as the blood of the dragon runs strong in her rulers, the glory of the empire shall extend in unbroken years. But should the dragon fires fail, and should no heir of our joined blood wear the amulet of kings, then shall the empire descend into darkness, and the demon lords of misrule shall govern the land." Alas, this covenant would become a fundamental facet of the Cyrodiilic Empire and its customs. But did the Imperials stay true to the terms, or did the Sacred Pact become little more than ceremony? Alicia and her successors possessed the dragon blood. So too did Riemann and his heirs. And we all know Tiber Septim was dragonborn as well, right? He used the Storm Voice to shout down the walls of Old Hroldan in his youth after all, before his throat was slit and he was forced to rule Tamriel with a whisper. There are some heretical accounts that suggest Tiber Septim was nowhere near as talented as the histories give him credit for, but that's not a topic for today. Even if we grant all of his accomplishments, Tiber Septim's direct line of heirs was wiped out within 2 generations, handing the reins of the Third Empire to Talos' niece, Kintyra. It could well be argued that there has not been an emperor of true dragon blood since then. It could even be argued that there hasn't been one since Riemann. The criteria for what makes an individual dragonborn is fickle, since it doesn't seem to be purely a matter of heredity. But this information is crucial, as it tells us one thing for certain. The Ruby Throne is desperate for a powerful ruler, a ruler who fits Akatosh's accord, a true Dragonborn Emperor. Now, the law regarding what constitutes a Dragonborn changed drastically after the release of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. All Nords have an innate connection with wind, for they are the children of the sky, breathed down upon the throat of the world by Kine. Many Nords will attest that Kine alone bestowed the Northmen with the ability to channel the Storm Voice. But in truth, it seems the goddess used Paarthurnax as a conduit, granting this gift to the Nords so that they may topple the tyranny of Alduin and his draconic legions. Even though all Nords can control the voice with a great deal of training, it is said that those born with the blood of dragons can immediately grasp the intricacies of dragon shouting through inherent instinct alone. When the Saessi invaded the shores of Tamriel in First Era 2703, they were searching for a Dragonborn. It is said that, upon hearing the voice of Riemann Cyrodiil, they knelt and swore their lives to him, their conqueror and saviour. And it couldn't have come at a better time for the Heartland. Cyrodiil had been without a unified empire for almost 400 years, and the chances of Tamriel uniting against the Akaviri threat seemed impossible. There were too many rival factions, too many power-hungry petty lords and kings. But Riemann was Dragonborn, and he guided the empire into a golden age. The Riemann dynasty boasted the fact it conquered all of Tamriel but for Morrowind. The term conquered is used very loosely here, but nevertheless, Riemann Cyrodiil was an illustrious emperor who brought prosperity to Tamriel. An Akaviri invasion is quite the catalyst for Tamriel's unification under a worthy emperor, but one could argue that in the 201st year of the Fourth Era, the need is even greater, and this is where you come in. It's been 10 years since the release of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, and there is one debate that continues in the community to this day: Stormcloaks or Imperials. There is a strong case to be made for each faction. Ulfric's motivations, despite his abrasive demeanour, are understandable. He fought for the Empire in the Great War, and was a prisoner of war captured by the Thalmor. He also reclaimed Markarth from Madanach and his forsworn savages. In exchange for his service, he was promised free worship of Talos, but instead he was arrested, and Talos worship was invariably outlawed in the north. Ulfric missed his father's funeral during his imprisonment, and when he was released and took his place as Jarl of Windhelm, he was rightfully outraged by the willingness of the Emperor and the High King of Skyrim to yield to all of the Dominion's demands. Ulfric took the fate of Skyrim into his own hands, slaying Torygg in a duel before declaring himself the new High King. In Ulfric's own words,
"I fight for the men I've held in my arms, dying on foreign soil. I fight for their wives and children whose names I heard whispered in their last breath. I fight for we few who did come home, only to find our country full of strangers wearing familiar faces. I fight for my people, impoverished to pay the debts of an empire too weak to rule them, yet brands them criminals for wanting to rule themselves. I fight so that all the fighting I've already done hasn't been for nothing. I fight because I must."
I'll leave it to you to judge just how noble Ulfric's cause is. The Empire too has a lot invested in this civil war, despite their success in the Battle of the Red Ring, reclaiming the Imperial City from the Aldmeri occupiers. The Empire was far too frail to continue the war. Titus Mede II had no choice but to bend to the terms of the White Gold Concordat. This treaty banned Talos worship, disbanded the Blades, and also required the Empire to cede much of southern Hammerfell to the Dominion. The Nords were not alone in their anger. The Red Guards, who had fought valiantly as vassals of the Cyrodiilic Empire, were incensed by these terms. They withdrew from the Empire and continued to fight the Aldmeri Dominion by themselves. This bold gambit proved a wise one, for they secured a much more favourable deal with the High Elves in the form of the Second Treaty of Stros M'Kai. This treaty compelled the Dominion to pull all of its troops from Hammerfell. Now, we can see why the Civil War is incredibly important to both the Stormcloaks and the Empire, but who should the Dragonborn support? Which faction's victory will better serve the future of Tamriel? Well, in order to answer that, we must look to the motives of the Thalmor. I've talked a lot in the past about the theory of the Towers, and what I believe the main plot for the Elder Scrolls 6 will be, and I think these are the most important factors in deciding who should win the Skyrim Civil War. The Aldmeri Dominion have been relentless in their efforts to conquer the mainland of Tamriel. Is it just a desire to rule that drives them, or is there something more? It's always been deeply ingrained in Altmeri culture to consider the mortal realm of Mundus as a trap, a prison. They wish to return to Aetherius, to be reunited with their ancestor gods. Of course, this isn't the belief of every High Elf, but the Thalmor are very effective when it comes to political machinations. The Thalmor are radical and xenophobic. They espouse complete elven supremacy over Tamriel and its peoples, and they are ruthless in extending their reach. They exploited the chaos of the Oblivion Crisis to seize power by claiming credit for ending the Daedric threat. They used their popularity to overthrow the long-reigning Altmeri monarchy, and they even took false credit once again, this time for returning the moons Massa and Secunda after they vanished from the night sky in an event that became known as the Void Nights. During the Great War, the Aldmeri Dominion was adamant about conquering Hammerfell, despite the immense toll it would inevitably take on their forces. I believe this is because the Thalmor wished to seize control of the Towers of Creation. They successfully took the Imperial City, which was home to the Tower of White Gold. And while the city was lost, the Emperor became their puppet. And to make matters worse, the Emperor was assassinated by the Dark Brotherhood. You can rest assured that the elves will instate a new puppet, whose strings are firmly entwined around the fingers of the Thalmor leadership. By capturing Hammerfell, the Aldmeri Dominion would have access to the southern shoreline of the Iliac Bay, and just across the water lies the preeminent tower, Adamantia, built by the Aedra in the Dawn. If the Thalmor wish to dismantle the towers and unmake creation, then it is clear which civil war outcome is most favourable for the well-being of Tamriel. The Aldmeri Dominion wished to see a prolonged struggle, for it would serve only to weaken both factions. A Stormcloak victory would return Nordic sovereignty to Skyrim, but at what cost? An empire divided will not be enough to stop the Thalmor. The only way to thwart the spread of High Elven supremacy is to unite. Recall now, if you will, the Akaviri invasion of First Era 2703. Tamriel was divided, and the land of Dawn's Beauty faced great peril. Salvation came in the form of a dragonborn named Riemann Cyrodiil, whose voice alone was enough to end the conflict and unite Tamriel. Sound familiar? In 4th Era 201, the Dragonborn has returned, and the prophesied hero has a choice: divide or unify. The Empire must win the civil war if it is to stop the Aldmeri Dominion, and the Dragonborn must lead the consolidated powers of Cyrodiil, Skyrim, High Rock and Hammerfell against the advancing elves. This could even have interesting player choice ramifications in the Elder Scrolls VI. Typically, the protagonists of each game disappear in some form or another. But what if you were prompted to decide the race and gender of the Dragonborn at the start of the game, to reflect the character you played in the Elder Scrolls V? This character could serve as the faceless Emperor in the Elder Scrolls VI, and may be referenced by NPCs in-game. Perhaps the protagonist of the Elder Scrolls VI will have the opportunity to fight alongside the Dragonborn's empire, or side with the Aldmeri Dominion. Will you save Tamriel from its calamitous collapse, or will you orchestrate its unmaking, destroying the world and finally bringing an end to this long drawn-out cowper? And there you have it. What do you think? Have I convinced you that the Empire must win the Civil War, or are you still staunchly in the Stormcloak camp? I can see the appeal of each side, but I'm curious to hear who you choose to support. Thank you so much for watching. Drew Moore is a new channel, and I'm dedicated to seeing it grow so I can continue to tell these stories. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description. Please, only pledge if you can afford it. I've also started a Discord, so if you'd like to chat to me and anyone else interested in Elden Ring and Elder Scrolls, come join. Thank you so much again. My name's Drew, you've been watching Drew Mora, and I'll see you in the next one.